Like, it's wonderful. It's like it's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. I hope everyone's doing quite well today. Here's my boys, Hervey and Daniel.
Hey,
Yep.
Guys, before we get into the main discussion, what's the best recent thing that we have all seen recently?
So my thing this week is a 1948 Hitchcock movie called Rope. So I got my hands on a collection of Hitchcock movies for a pretty good price. So I've been watching through them in order. Some of them I've seen, some of them I haven't seen, and some of them are more gripping than others. But one that I really liked was Rope, which is essentially these two New York socialites who, in the very first scene, kill their best friend in order to prove to themselves that they can commit the perfect crime. And then they hide the body in a wooden chest in the room, and then they have a dinner party with their entire friend group and some of the family of the friend they just killed. And the whole thing is essentially a dare to prove to themselves that they can do it, and then that they can get away with it. And so they call Hitchcock the master of suspense, and this is really one of those where he earned that name, because the entire thing is basically, will they be found out? Will they slip up? Will somebody look inside the chest? And so on. It's quite suspenseful and very atmospheric. And it's also filmed as if it was one shot. It's not really. There's some editing tricks, but it's filmed as if it's one continuous shot. So the whole thing unfolds in real time. So you've got this kind of ticking clock kind of thing where you know that the dinner party is going to be over soon, and you wonder who's going to discover it, or whether somebody will discover it, or whether one of the two murderers will lose their nerves. And like, there's all these, it's very character focused and it's very stage play like, and I enjoyed it a lot. It's really quite good.
I can say it sounds very interesting. Do you feel like, because I know you say it's from the 1940s, do you feel like it could be remade in modern times? I mean, how long is the movie, and do you feel like it could be made into like a full feature-length film if it's not one already?
The movie is 80 minutes, and like I said, it's real time, right? So it feels like one take. It's been remade, I think, twice. I don't know how good those remakes are.
Okay.
And I think it was based on a stage play as well. I'm not sure entirely. But anybody could remake this movie at any time, right? There's some things that are specific to the 1940s, but primarily it's psychological, and it's basically this idea that these upper class socialites think that they're better than everybody else and have to prove to themselves that that's true. And they do that by getting away with a perfect crime. That's the essence of it, and you could update that into any era.
Mm-hmm.
Were there moments where you kind of lost interest, or where you zoned out? Because obviously it's one take, so it's very hard to do. Which, by the way, I think filmmakers, any aspiring filmmakers should go and watch this film, because I will be watching this film because I am very intrigued to see how they shot this. But yeah.
I thought it dragged a bit in the middle, and it could have easily been 10 or 20 minutes shorter. It makes its point essentially at the beginning and at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of stuff in the middle that is not irrelevant, but it could be condensed quite a bit. But I'm also pretty militant about that stuff. I think most movies could be quite a bit shorter than they are, and could be more to the point. And this is no exception, but it's not boring exactly. Like, there's some Hitchcock movies that really drag that I've seen in the past week, especially his earlier stuff and the ones you maybe haven't heard of, and there's a reason why you haven't heard of them. But this, like, 80 minutes is already pretty short for a movie, and it overall doesn't, you could cut a little bit here and there, but it's all suspense basically, and to do that it needs to breathe a bit. So it's not dragged out or anything.
Cool. Okay, well, I'll definitely be watching that.
That sounds very interesting. But yeah, my best thing to watch recently, again, life's busy at the moment, as you all know, but I did catch a couple more episodes of X-Men 97 actually while I was building a chest of drawers. I caught up until episode 4, so one before the big episode 5, which everyone was talking about, and it's getting better. It's getting like very interesting. Some of like the character drama side of it is quite interesting as well, and it's good background TV at the moment. I would say it's just quite interesting. Some interesting scenes, some like interesting sort of like fight scenes in there as well. And yeah, introduced me to like a bunch of different characters as well that I wasn't like super familiar with from the X-Men. Like, kind of like, I know like Mr. Sinister, I do know of him, but like haven't like really seen him in something like this form as well, and things like Morph and stuff like that. So it's just like interesting, kind of like easy to put in the background type of TV show, really.
And it holds up. It's not just the novelty of, hey, we made this to look like it's from the 90s and we've kept it in a vault for 30 years. It's actually a good story.
So far, yeah. So far, it's interesting.
Okay.
So I'm 1 away from episode 5, which everyone kind of lost their minds on. So I'm interested to see what that big kind of reveal is or plot twist is.
I didn't even know this existed. This is, what was it, X-Men 97, you said?
Yeah.
It's a 90. So in the 90s, there was an X-Men animated cartoon. And this essentially is the continuation of that. And they went out of the, so it picks up right after in the story, right after the one in the 90s ended. And it's made to look exactly like it's using the same art style and everything. It's made to look as much as possible as if it was from the 90s.
Even like the characters and the way they speak and stuff like that, it very much feels like it's in that time period.
Oh, so this is, okay. So when was this actually released?
Recent, like they're doing episodic releases of it.
Oh,
I don't know if they dumped it all. Did they dump it all? I can't. No, I think
haven't seen any of it yet, but it's gradually released for the last 2 months or something.
Yeah, it's an episodic release of the show. Yeah, so it's kind of ongoing at the moment.
oh wow! This whole time I thought you were talking about some sort of the X-Men series that came out in the 90s. I was thinking, oh, okay. Well, what triggered you to watch that? But this is actually, oh crap! It's just the settings is the 90s. Oh, okay. I did not know they released X-Men series recently.
I'm a token Marvel shill here, so anytime Marvel puts out anything, I kind of know about it. So yeah.
Okay, so is it the best? Would you say it's the best recent? Cause I think their best recent series that they dropped was Loki, because I think the other stuff that they dropped after that was, it was a female series which
Marvel.
Echo, probably.
Which one?
Echo.
Echo, yes, and then obviously. Yeah, there was Echo, and then there was Shield, was it?
She-Hulk as well.
She-Hulk, and then there was what's the one with Samuel Jackson?
Oh, Secret Invasion.
Yeah, so they haven't really been dropping any good stuff lately. So this one you'd say is definitely worth the watch.
I mean, those are like live action, and those are sort of meant to be a little bit more serious or whatever, and obviously are part of like the Marvel sort of cinematic universe. So, to that standard, they, pale in comparison. It's like they're just not great TV shows, and they shouldn't be part of the continuation. But something like this, where it kind of like stands on its own, it's its own type of thing, and it's like animated TV show as well, and it's kind of like recapturing the feel of the 90s. It's something like completely different, and it's definitely something worth checking out. I would say.
Well, so this is animated.
It's animated, yeah. This is animated.
Oh, I thought. Oh, I know Daniel mentioned that the one that came out in the 90s was animated. I didn't know this one was animated as well.
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
Well, this is made to look as if it's the same show, as if they just kept going.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Damn, I feel so lost. Okay, I'm gonna check out the trailer to that one. But cool. Well, me, the one that came out in 2004, I just couldn't do it, man. And I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but yeah, guys, I don't know. I think this film has received. I'm like, The Punisher was. I've heard mentions about it, and I do believe people have good opinions on it, which is what I'm a bit confused on. Even though I clocked out after like 30 minutes, maybe I don't know. Let me know down in the comment section below if it does get more interesting after that, because I just couldn't get into this film, man. It just.
Isn't that well liked? Like there's the Netflix show from a few years ago that a lot of people liked. There's the Dirty Laundry short film that everybody loves, but it's the 2004 version that beloved.
Is the series that you're referring to Frank Castle?
Well, that's the character's name.
Yeah, I believe that's that's the character. But I believe that's the one that you're talking about. In terms of, but if they make a series out of it, then.
Well, there was a Punisher
series.
It's part of the Marvel Netflix thing with Daredevil and Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
And I thought he was my opinion on the Punisher is that he's a really good supporting character and kind of anti-villain, but he's not a good protagonist because he's not actually a hero. And I think he plays off other characters like Daredevil's sense of justice or Spider-Man's sense of optimism and compassion really well. But if you make him the protagonist, it kind of gets a bit samey, I think.
Well, I assume, because if they're making a series out of it, then surely it must have been received well from the audience.
I think he like Daniel said, he first appeared in the Daredevil Netflix series actually, and I think he did like so well as a character that they then just kind of created his own show for him. And he's actually reappearing in the new Daredevil TV series that they're currently making at the moment. So he's going to be sort of coming back, the same actor as well. But yeah, I thought his show was good. I thought his like Netflix show was actually quite a good watch actually, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out as well then. Because I couldn't get into the movie, but yeah, I'll check out this. Because the actor who played in it was in The Walking Dead, and he was a good actor. So
yeah, no, he's a good actor. But funny you say that about the old Marvel shows, because this one's controversial because I tried to watch Blade, and I know everyone loves Blade.
Oh no,
the Wesley Snipes version.
The Wesley Snipes version, and I just couldn't. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I checked out after like about half an hour.
Which one did you watch? The first movie?
The first one, yeah, first movie.
You didn't like the Blood Rave?
No, I didn't like the Blood Rave. No.
Okay, you're crazy, man. What the heck? You didn't like? Whoa.
What did you not like about it?
I just wasn't interested. I don't know. It just
like the character or Wesley Snipes' version of it or the tone.
No, it's like difficult to say because when I actually tried to watch this was like a good while ago, maybe like a year or so ago when I actually did try to watch The Blade. So and I only watched half an hour of it, but like. I mean, like the bad guys in it were like a bit camp and cringe in my opinion. It just wasn't. It was just like awkward and awkward to watch. I don't know. It's difficult to like try and remember like everything. But like yeah, the Blood Rave scene. It didn't really do anything for me.
It's very 90s, but it's awesome.
Okay, fair.
I think Wesley Snipes, this Wesley Snipes version is pretty incredible. Like the fight scenes, the grit of it, the bloodiness of it, like somehow he doesn't become annoying, even though he's so edgelord and so 90s cool. Yeah. Somehow it works, at least for me. So yeah, I adore the first two movies.
Yeah. Do you know what it is sometimes as well? And this is why I don't like watching movies at home, is that sometimes I just have distractions and maybe I'm not giving it my full attention. And maybe that's part of the reason why I just couldn't get into it. Maybe I wasn't ready to watch it at the time, I would say. But yeah, who knows?
But you have to at least get to some efforts always trying to ice skate uphill.
What'd you say?
Some MFers always trying to ice skate uphill. It's the best line in the movie.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I got that, but
and I censor that for YouTube purposes, but that's not the original quote. It's just great. Like there's this henchman. Did you see the henchman who dies in the subway? Like the villain has like this henchman and he keeps dying. Blade keeps killing him and he keeps coming back to life and he gets more and more annoyed with it and tired of it and Blade just keeps killing him. It's wonderful. He does it like 4 times in the movie.
I think I remember that. I watched it so long. I haven't watched it in primary school, but I think I remember that. But yeah, maybe this movie just isn't for you. I was saying, I think there was a.
If you didn't like this one, maybe try the second one. It's quite different in terms of style, but it's still the same character. Third one you can forget. That's some Ryan Reynolds nonsense. But 1 and 2 are great, but they are different. So if you like the idea of Blade but didn't like the specifics of the first one, maybe give the second one a shot.
I will. I'll give it another try. All
right, guys. Well, it's time for the main event.
Jonathan, Farm Simulator, the movie. No, I'm joking. It basically was, but Rebel Moon. Come on, let's get straight to it, man.
So, part 1 was, I wouldn't say it was doo-doo, but it just wasn't for me. Part 2, I would say the battle saved it from being a bad movie. It was okay. I think, unfortunately, the screenplay really let down the film as a whole. And unfortunately, I wasn't like emotionally gripping. Like I didn't feel anything while watching this film, unfortunately. The only times which I did feel like, a bit of a good feeling was, the whole community building up towards this big battle. And then when the battle actually happened, and there were some scenes for me which were highlight moments, which I enjoyed. But overall, it just I think the screenplay, it just wasn't I think because we just come back from watching Dune, right? So now our expectancy for storytelling is on here. So when you watch Dune 2 and then you watch Rebel Moon Part 2, it's like, damn, this is what we've been dealing with for a very long time. So I think, Zack Snyder should have, even though he had two other writers with him, I think he should have just given this to, a script writer, a really good script writer, because he should have just concentrated on the visuals. Because for me, like, I enjoyed certain scenes, especially the scene which we'll go into a later spoiler section. But yeah, overall, the battle definitely saved it for me. It wasn't a bad movie, but it was definitely let down by its screenplay. Anyone else?
As Daniel likes to say, this is not a movie. Like, this is some of the worst writing I've come across in a movie, point blank period. And everyone knows I've mentioned The Beekeeper several times across sort of various different videos. This is now officially the worst movie I've seen this year. Like, it is extremely bad. It's actually like laughable, some of the scenes that are in here and some of the dialogues. You spend the first 30 minutes of the movie doing Farm Simulator, where they're just kind of, going through Zack Snyder's slow-mo of them like cutting wheat, and it's just like, what? Like, there clearly wasn't a well thought out story within this. And I know you mentioned about not liking the battle towards the end, but I feel like, you've been beaten up by the movie so much by that point that I just didn't care. Like, I didn't care at that point. I just wanted the movie to be over. And I remember I was watching this on Sunday, like really late, and I was just like, I just want to go to bed, but obviously I've got to watch the movie for this. And it was just it was like painful having to get through the rest of the movie. I mean, there's one incredibly stupid scene where everyone's sat around the table and they're just going through their backstory, and I'm like, how has this made it into the movie? Like, how has this passed all the checks? And and then, sorry, I don't know the guy's character's name because I didn't care about them enough, and they didn't do enough character development for any of them. But the guy that just nonstop just like constantly was doing epic speeches for no reason throughout. I can't remember the black guy's name, but he was just like
Titus, probably.
Titus.
Like you at first it wasn't. I was going to say, can you narrow it down? But then, yeah, you're probably talking about Titus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
black guy. But literally, he would just break out into like just random speeches and random points of the movie, and I'm like, please shut up, man. I don't want to hear it. And I would love to know how Zack Snyder's robbed a living from Netflix, because I'd like to do the same. Because if he can get however many millions out of Netflix for the movies he's just created, I'm sure I can do the same, if not better.
So you're not on board with the next 4 parts?
Please cancel it. We do not need any more. We don't need any more. We do not need Farm Simulator, the Snyder cut, or anything like that at all. Like, we don't need the R-rated cut. We don't need any of that. Like, you've tortured people enough with 4 hours. We do not need another like extra like 2 or 3 hours of like whatever cut you have shown, like to possibly make this movie slightly better. It's not needed.
Yeah, Harvey, you're moving mad. So wait, hold on. You're telling me this one is worse than the first one?
This is awful. Like, this is.
So which one's better? Number 1 or number 2?
They're just as bad as each other, and like,
no.
Bad. I completely. I couldn't even like the bar is so low. Like, you're asking me which one's better. The bar is so low for it to be better than the first one, and I don't even know if it clears it. If I'm honest.
Do you know why I think you're saying this?
Because the first one, do you know what it is? Do you know what it is as well with the first one? Is that I was trying to be on board with the first one. I was trying to like, follow along and enjoy like what was being presented to me. And enough of that was in me as well going into the second one. I was like, okay, maybe you didn't quite get it right on the first one, but maybe it's just set up and we're going to maybe go into something that's a little bit more interesting. And even when I almost fooled myself when they brought back the villain from the dead, and they were like, oh, like he's kind of, he was almost dead and his brain functions whatever, and they were like, they don't know what he's going to be like when he comes out of it. I was like, okay, cool, you have something like maybe interesting there that you can possibly explore. And I nearly lied to myself and thought that they would do something interesting with that. But then you just have to remember that this is a Zack Snyder movie that he's written. And again, not to completely bash him, because like there are movies. Because there's movies of his that I've enjoyed, like, things like Watchmen, obviously Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, stuff like that. Like, he's not.
I enjoyed the Snyder Cut of Justice League as well. But...
Exactly. I mean, I enjoyed the Snyder Cut of Justice League as well. So he's not completely incompetent, but it seems like he wasn't as much as in control of the scripts as he is here. And they've given him so much reins with this, and it's just a disaster, bro. It's just a disaster. There's nothing else to say. It's a disaster. Like, this is billed as the Star Wars killer. This is meant to be the next big epic thing, and there's nothing memorable about any of. The only thing that's memorable about it is how bad it is basically it. So.
Listen, the reason why I'm so combative with what you're saying is I'm not disagreeing with the points that you're making. It's the worst movie of the year far. The worst movie you've seen so far statement. Whoa. The reason why I think what's influencing your decision to making this the worst film that you've seen so far, which I don't blame, and I actually understand if other people are saying this as well, is because of Dune 2. Because guys, previous to Dune 2, what other good movies have we seen where the storytelling was as exceptional as Dune 2?
We're not just Dune 2 makes this look even worse.
Yes.
But even if Dune 2 hadn't come out, my opinion about this movie would be exactly the same. Because it just fails down on so elementary storytelling techniques. It's ridiculous.
I agree. The storytelling.
Jonathan, how can you have 4 people round the table and just one by one they're listing off their backstories and this is the second movie. Bear in mind, we
already got their backstories in the last movie.
Yeah, and then they were just expanding.
We're getting a second backstory for his character.
Whilst Titus sat there with a stupid tear in his eye, listening to these are the saddest stories in the world. I couldn't believe and literally when they first did it, I was like, okay. And I was like, surely not. I said, surely not. In just basic writing and storytelling, I said, surely not. We're not going around every single person in this table. And he did. So this is god awful, man. I can't lie. It's just, yeah.
Listen, I get what you guys are saying, but worst film of the year, worst film that we've seen so far, that's a bit.
What's worse? Huh? What's worse?
Night Swim.
For me, it was The Beekeeper. And I know you like
The Beekeeper. It was a coherent story.
Oh, listen, Beekeeper, this is where we all disagree. Well, no, you two agree with this. But Beekeeper, for me, it was a very good movie for me. And Night Swim was one of the worst movies. Daniel says Night Swim was a coherent movie. I don't know what you said about Night Swim, Hervé, but
I was okay with Night Swim.
Oh, okay, there you go. So I disagree with you two when it comes to Night Swim and Beekeeper. So of course we're gonna disagree with this one. I'm not saying Rebel Moon was a good movie. I literally just said the battle scene saved it from being a bad movie.
You think this is this is above bad movie?
This is an average film. Because there were times where I was on my phone, but when I got back to being interested in the film again, actually being engaged in the film, well, when I say engaged, I wouldn't necessarily say I was enjoying the experience, but I was tolerating the experience. And there were some moments in the film which I was enjoying, like, for example, spoiler zone, the falling battleship scene where I actually enjoyed that. Huh?
You've killed the audience by that point. We're all dead. You killed the audience. We don't care by that point.
So I have seen worse movies, but it's like 1-star movies on Amazon Prime, right? Like the bad kind of indie movie. Like those movies are worse than this. But
this is where
because of whatever failings Zack Snyder has as a filmmaker, he's made movies before. He kind of knows how to do it. He just has all the wrong sensibilities. But yeah, this is not like, this is a functioning movie in the sense that it has a plot and stuff, but none of it makes sense or is what you should do in any way, in any shape or form.
So the main issue is the storytelling. Everything else was okay, I'm assuming. For you.
Well, I think the effects are ugly as well, and like it does not look nice for the most part. There's some shots in there that I think look nice, but. And actually more, I was going to get to that, but in the first movie there was almost nothing I thought that looked good, maybe the occasional frame or something, but here there were big chunks of scenes that said, oh, this looks kind of neat. And, you know, I'm just to get my basic summary out of the way. I like this a little bit better than the first part, mostly because at this point we already know the characters, and because we're not doing the stupid fetch quest where we assemble the party. Because that was out of the way, we had time for an actual story, and there is something like a story here. It's just really poorly told, like on a character level, on a pacing level, on a structure level. It's worse than the Star Wars prequels, and that's a low bar, right? In terms of how it communicates its ideas, how it structures them, how it communicates information to the audience. It's clumsy and amateurish and boring and melodramatic in the worst kind of way.
Damn. Okay.
But it's better than part 1.
Okay.
Which is an extremely low bar.
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, please think about this question. What did you like about the film? Try and dig deep.
2 things. So I think the sequence where Cora goes on board the ship and sabotages it, not all of it, but large chunks of it are passable, like neat, like look nice. And then individual effects, like the plasma swords, for example, they look sufficient. They're clearly supposed to be lightsabers, but they're sufficiently different that they have their own feel to it. I kind of like Nemesis's subplot, where she has this rapport with the young boy. There were like a couple of there was like 3 or 4 scenes where they had an interaction, and this whole thing about, you know, she's a mother who wanted to get revenge for her children and has been consumed by the rage, and now she's slowly getting her humanity back. Like that is kind of implied a little bit, and there's like individual moments that are kind of nice, and she's probably the most likable character because of that, in my opinion. Have I any positives?
You're not getting any out of me. I'm so sorry.
What else? There's not a lot, because like the battle, for instance, I didn't really care for, mostly because I think it's really poorly shot. It's very clearly shot on a soundstage. Everybody is within half a meter of everybody else, and all the backgrounds are blurry and kind of warped. And I don't have the technical knowledge to describe what Snyder did, but he did the same thing in what is it called, Casino of the Dead or whatever, and like his Las Vegas movie from a few years ago. And he did the same in Justice League, where he just films things in a way that make everything look blurry and muddy. And I don't know why he likes that and why his fans like it, but I just think it looks ugly. Like especially that scene where the Motherworld troops land and Cora goes to negotiate. Like the backgrounds they're like really blurry and warped, and there's this lensing effect, and it's awful. And then in the battle itself, everything happens within a 5x5 meter space, or seemingly it looks like it, and everything that doesn't happen in that space is clearly CG'd. So there's lots of things to dislike about this, but I thought there was more to like than the first one. But it's like individual designs, like, or the battle for the barn kind of thing. There were a couple of scenes or a couple of sequences where I thought, hey, this looks kind of cool, when they break through the door and, you know, the villagers fight back, and now the sword fight between the soldiers and Nemesis. They look kind of nice.
I felt like that was like really weak choreography in that particular fight scene. With like
it's not spectacular, but it's okay.
Yeah, for me it was.
It's better than like in episode 1. In part 1, they had the slow motion firefights where they are just pulling the trigger, and the whole thing is in slow motion, and they're just running towards each other, just shooting, and nobody's taking cover, nobody's doing anything, but the movie thinks it's the most epic scene ever, and so it's in slow motion. For example, stuff like that, there wasn't as much of that here.
You had a little bit of it where you had the guy running around with like the axe and stuff like that without like really having any cover, and he's like literally directly in front of some of the soldiers who could just easily shoot him, and they don't.
Yeah, nobody used any kind of tactics in this anyway.
No,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it just really makes them look stupid, and it makes me check out of the movie when there is no thought put into it. Right? If you're gonna, like, these are soldiers, why do they not have tactics? Why do they not take cover? Why do they have not fire support? Why do they not have like fighting doctrines? It's just people standing in a field shooting guns at each other. Like, that's it.
I definitely see it from that perspective. I see it. It did feel like it was just, it was a build up to a battle, even though that was the angle that they were going at. That's literally what was just presented to us. So I understand. Okay, so
one more positive.
Okay.
At the end of the last review of part 1, I said, what can they possibly do to resolve this? Like, why don't they just shoot them from orbit? And the whole thing about holding the grain hostage actually was kind of neat. I kind of like clapped when I saw that, just because I didn't think Snyder would think that far. I honestly didn't. And again, this is like damning with faint praise, but this actually surprised me that they thought of that. Now it ends up not mattering, because at some point the guy just says, "I'll kill them all anyway. We've lost enough soldiers, so we won't need the grain. So just burn it all down." Which is another thing. But like the fact that they remembered that they needed a reason to not just be, turned to slag, molten slag from orbit is nice.
Well, for me, I enjoy it.
These are really faint. These are really faint. This is really faint praise. But stuff like that wasn't in part 1, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
right? Or was it?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so whatsoever. And well, for me, I enjoyed, when they were training up the community, preparing them for battle. Like I said, I already enjoyed.
They did nothing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But did they do anything interesting, or was it exactly what you thought it was going to be?
It was what I thought it was going to be, but just the whole training underdogs to be warriors. In
the space of like 3 days against the Galactic Empire, it was just like. They should have been wiped. They should have been wiped out, man. They just didn't make it.
Maybe we should bypass the specifics.
Yeah,
but the thing is, like, what's there to latch onto, right? So I hadn't seen this. Like, this is clearly based on the Seven Samurai, right? And I hadn't seen that when we reviewed part 1, and I have seen it now. And the similarities are striking, right? Bad guys threaten village. Villagers go out to recruit warriors. Warriors come back to the village, train villagers, defeat the bad guys. That's the basic story of it, and that's what Rebel Moon is. But Seven Samurai did it a whole lot better because they actually had weeks to do it, and I don't know why they had to do it in 3 days. Like I can buy that an experienced warrior can within a few weeks whip together a town militia, but they didn't have 3 days to train. They had 1 day to train. Because on day 5 they arrived and they needed 3 days to bring in the harvest, so they had 1 day to train.
Oh, scheiße. Okay.
I've got a positive, and that was the funniest scene in the movie for me. I legitimately laughed out loud when I realized what was going on. Can you guess what it is?
What?
This is the funniest regicide I've ever seen.
Funniest what?
The funniest regicide, killing of a king. So when the king is killed, or the king and queen are killed. So
yeah.
So first of all, the whole thing is nonsense, right? So Korra is the bodyguard of the princess, and she's part of the setup. And so they kind of lure the royal family into an ambush where they threaten to kill them, but then Korra kills them, and then they throw Korra under the bus as being a traitor. And so she pulls a gun on the bad guy. They exchange like a dramatic look, and then she leaves. So that's already a terrible scene. Like, why? But the funniest thing was there's like classic like violin music in the background, and that you realize that music was not added on top. It was in universe in the scene. There are violin and cello players in the background that were playing, and they keep playing while the king is being killed, and to make the music more dramatic. They really get into it.
I didn't realize.
This is killed Daniel.
Hey guys, wait, I didn't realize.
They're really gonna.
I don't know if Daniel's gonna be able to finish what he's gonna say.
So they watch as the king is being killed, right? And they really get into it. They keep their music gets more and more dramatic, and they keep playing as this whole thing unfolds.
Yeah.
Like it's wonderful. It's like it's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
I didn't realize.
Somebody else start talking. I can't.
Okay,
no,
so
sorry.
Oh
but isn't that the best thing?
Oh my god, I did not realize that.
Right. I was confused by that scene because I wasn't sure what the hell was
They
going
even close up on the violin the cello players as they keep playing.
Yeah.
And they're wearing like the bags over their heads and everything.
Yeah.
And they just roll with it. It's incredible.
Oh man. Okay.
Compose.
Okay, so what was it about the script that? Because I'm pretty sure it's universal. People just didn't like the script. I've seen reviews on this. Like universities, just no one liked the script. So what was it about the script that didn't work for you or irked you? Just something that you didn't like about the script.
That they spent the first 20 minutes farming and showing us slow-mos of them harvesting wheat. Like at that point, you know that they have nothing to say in the movie. At that point, you just know that there's nothing substantial in the movie when you're spending the first 20 minutes of Titus giving a ridiculous speech and then the farmers harvesting wheat, basically. And even to the point that we were just talking about here with sort of the scene with the cello players and the king's killed. Like even that, it's like you're telling me that Cora was betrayed by the Galactic Empire that she was part of. She was betrayed by them, cast away, and didn't think that she should maybe like alert anyone or like maybe like whistleblow and like maybe like try to like tell some important people actually what went down with the king, as opposed to just being deemed as the traitor that killed the royal family. Like there's just like holes in the story, which, you know, when you kind of look at it and you piece it together, it just doesn't add up properly.
I actually kind of like this idea of there's this kingdom or this empire, and the king kind of has completed like a campaign of conquest and is done now, but the military wants to keep going, so they assassinate him. And then they seem to have this, they occasionally allude to this whole thing that they're doing all of this in the king's name, right? Mm-hmm. So they're keeping it secret that the king wanted to stop the war. Yeah. And they claim to be acting in his name, which is a really cool idea, I think. Like just as a concept, it's got a lot of potential. Problem is it doesn't inform anything else that's going on. Like we don't see that in their rhetoric, in their propaganda, in how they conduct themselves. I think they say in the name of the dead king or whatever it is once that I caught. Why is this not constantly being invoked? And why is that not what they gain their legitimacy from? Right, in our review of part 1, we were wondering what's their theory of power, right? How, like, what makes them work and what makes them successful, and kind of propping up this image of a dead king that they can use as a sock puppet for anything, and that gives them legitimacy. That's a really neat idea. And maybe there could be people who doubt that the king really wanted this or whatever, right? You can imagine stuff going on here. But the movie doesn't do that. And it kind of sprinkles the stuff in there, but not in an elegant way. There's a way to sprinkle like this background information into it to give it flavor. But here we need that to really understand what's going on and who these people are and how this universe works. And they never do that. That's like for me number 1 on the list.
And that's the problem. Sorry, that's the problem with Rebel Moon as a whole, is that there are sprinklings of good ideas all throughout it. There's neat ideas, and it's just not executed well at all. I feel like if they had competent writers that actually like properly sat down and, you know, really took it through, really fleshed out the story within here, and really like kind of like gave it a little bit more juice and beefed up a little bit, it would have been a good franchise to follow. But it's just we've just not been left with enough to work with.
Yeah, I think you guys said it well as well. I think especially the whole point about if they beefed up a bit, because I do think the problem with me when it comes to the script is they kind of they bypassed moments that needed an explanation or some sort of backstory, especially like with the whole what's her name again? The main actress. Cora, yeah, especially when she was pretty much betrayed by her dad. It was like, because I remember from in the first movie, he really loved her. Like I'm saying so he really loved her. So I was just wondering, okay, so then how did he reach from that really loving her into actually betraying her and making her seem like she's a snake? That wasn't explained.
And was it ever a thing that she was not the same ethnicity as them? Because in the king killing scene, they say something like ethnically impure cancer or something.
Yeah.
Was this ever brought up before?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
And has this kind of like purity has that ever been a thing for them? Because it doesn't seem to be.
Unless they had plans in their upcoming projects. But it seems you know what it is? It seems like, so what I think they're gonna do, they're gonna touch on the unanswered questions in their future projects, because that's what I'm assuming is going on. Because like I said, it was a lot of moments which weren't answered, especially like I was going to mention as well with the whole robot. Like I get he had like a conversation with Korra, which I understand. Okay, I understand how that could kind of like trigger him to finally join in the battle, but those were just a few simple words here and there that couldn't have, because like that he literally went against his whole programming to start fighting again. So it's like, how that, like, surely more must have happened for you to trigger for that to trigger you to start fighting again. So yeah, there were, for me personally,
I would be okay with that if we had gotten a whole bunch of answers but not all of them. Then I would be convinced that there are answers and they are interesting or could be interesting, and we just haven't gotten to all of them yet, and there's stuff for more movies. But we haven't gotten any answers on anything. Like there's little bits scattered throughout, but not enough to actually make sense of anything. And so, like, I was going to bring up Jimmy the Robot, which, by the way, best name in the movie. What's his deal? Why is he a knight? Why does he do what he does? Why does he not actively join the villagers? Why is he staying on the sidelines? Why is he wearing deer antlers? Why does he say anything? Why is he voiced by Anthony Hopkins? Why? Everything to do with Jimmy is just a big why.
I think as well is this movie's proven that it doesn't know how to expand on things in terms of like, it doesn't know how to like introduce, even all the way down to its characters, its kind of like core principle. It doesn't know how to like introduce a character and really like start to like flesh them out and like start to sort of slowly peel away at their character and start to like reveal more and more about them. And you get instances like this where they maybe had the idea of Jimmy the Robot, this cool idea of like having like this robot that was like a peacekeeper or whatever. But then they
like in the first part, they give exposition on how they used to be servants of the mother world or the empire or whatever, and they are basically relics and have been reduced to basically laborers, and they have to do what the humans say, right? And they used to be proud warriors, and now they're basically forklifts, right? And that's, again, has potential, could be something, but it's not.
Question. Because we've kind of like acknowledged that we see at times what he was trying to do, and we appreciate that. Do you think with the ideas that was presented in the first part, and with the ideas that was presented in the second part, it would have made sense to try and incorporate both of the movies as part one rather than separating into part one and part two? Because I think what was lacking in both of it was like I felt like both of them needed to be beefed up because it felt very light, and like we just said, there was a lot of unanswered questions. So do you think if he just made just one whole movie, just like one movie out of the two, that it could have potentially made it a better film?
I mean, that's why we cut part one some slack, right? Because we thought, well, whatever doesn't make sense now might make sense in part two. But we've not seen part two, and there have been not zero answers, but very few. And the ones that have been given are partially contradicted by what came before, or are incomplete, or don't make a whole lot of sense. And you basically have to imagine the answer in order for it to make any sense, including even what the mother world is.
I think as well, and I saw this comment somewhere, that part two generally does feel like a glorified act 3 of a movie, where you get to the point where you need to train up the villagers for this big final battle. And with that sense, if you watch Rebel Moon part 1 and part 2 together, it doesn't really, like you said, there's like too many things that just don't make sense or are left unexplained, or just just not expanded on enough to give the audience something to look forward to in the next part 3 or part 4, or nothing. Like, you can't really theorize on anything because like Daniel's mentioned, like, you might have something cool that's been inserted into the movie, and you can't predict where it's going to go because it could very much just go nowhere, like most things have done in this in the movie.
Yeah.
In terms of sorry, carry on, Daniel.
I was just going to say, like, on the front of bad writing, like, gun to your head, name a character arc. There isn't really one. I don't think Korra has one, and if she doesn't have one, then everybody else certainly doesn't. They all have kind of one. They have a backstory that gives them a motive for not liking the mother world, and they have a personality trait, and that's it. None of them have any kind of arc, and even Korra, I'm not sure, has one, because Like she doesn't like it. Like the closest, like the part where I thought that maybe she had one was when she offers to turn herself in order to save the villagers. First of all, why does she think that like anybody from the Motherworld can be trusted? Right? Why? Like the minute she's on board, why are the villagers not like back where they started? Second of all, why did she like? What's her journey that has led her to that point? Right? She spent like, the last few years running away from them, and then she makes the decision to help the villagers. But how does which I guess is the beginning of an arc? But how does this tie into her giving herself up for the villagers?
I think they tried
to say anything about her.
I think they tried to do all of that through them actually saying what they went through, even though I don't think that works. I do agree they should have actually showed a character arc, but I think he tried to cover that through especially when they were around that whole table. And there'll be moments where she was telling, especially her boyfriend, I don't know if that was her boyfriend, but her boyfriend is calling her boyfriend. There'll be moments where she'll tell obviously him her story. So I think he tried to
twice, once in each movie.
Yeah. So I think he tried to do it through that, but I do agree there wasn't. It shouldn't have been presented. It shouldn't have been presented that way, because you could argue that's just lazy script writing.
It's I wouldn't even call it that lazy. I would call it amateurish. It's like this is like a 14-year-old's idea of what a cool science fiction epic is like. Honestly, like every single character is like the most shallow version of what a 14-year-old thinks is cool. I don't know. I just didn't. Yeah.
Like the whole like rebellion group as well, just showing up at the end, like
after the battle.
After the battle, like none of it was foreshadowed. None of it was like shown or predicted. They just turn up at the end, and it's just like, okay, cool, they're in the movie now, and it just is, yeah.
I think with that one as well, did anything happen in part one? Because I do remember her, but was there any indication that she would have popped up in part two from the conversation that she had with her brother?
No, like she completely she left her brother to go fight on his own, and she was like, no, we're not part of this. We're not like sort of helping out. And her brother had a little bit more heart and decided that he wanted to be of help, if I remember correctly. So then obviously like her brother died, but then her just like showing up randomly, it's just like, okay, like there wasn't any communication, especially because they had like the other warrior that was also part of the rebellion group as well. That if they had any interest in sort of doing any sort of character arc or sort of letting us know a little bit more about the characters, could have sort of had some dialogue or some communication between the two of them, which could have been like, okay, like, your brother during the fight, your brother was killed, this, and the other, this is still our fight, and this is still your fight, and like, when you're needed over here, whatever, just like something along sort of those lines, which would then explain why they just turned up in the movie. But of course, there's nothing there.
And there's more examples of stuff like this, right? Like Titus' alcoholism. I think he was an alcoholic in the first part, right?
Yeah.
Where he was basically drinking himself to death because of his regrets. And then in movie 2, he stops drinking. He just goes cold turkey and hides it from everybody. Successfully hides it from everybody. Only Cora, because of her protagonist powers, realizes it, right? But it has no consequence for anything or relevance to anything other than they say, yep, it's water, moving on. Right? Nobody's happy for him, and he also doesn't struggle with it. Like, he doesn't relapse, he doesn't make the decision, unless I missed it, and I watched it like 1.5 times. It's completely missing from his actual character. Like, they say it about him, but it doesn't inform like what he does, how he fits into the group. It never jeopardizes his ability to actually train the villagers and do his job. Nothing like it. Like, none of these things don't all have to be there, but these are all things that could happen because the guy you are relying on to put to whip these farmers into shape is an alcoholic and therefore might crack at any moment. But that doesn't happen either. He's just given that because it's like an accessory. It's not an extra personality trait.
Especially because he's like meant to be a war general, and he's meant to be like setting the plans for how they're going to fight against the Galactic Empire, and it's just like you could have had some conflict there where people are maybe like, you have maybe someone that's questioning him if he's sort of like maybe still an alcoholic, or if he's like recovering and maybe he's not like completely there or completely off sound of mind when he's making sort of a certain decision. It's like, you can insert the conflict there to sort of show him overcoming that, but then they don't.
And then they don't have to do it, but then why even put it there?
because it's cool.
Right, why set it up when if it's not going to be paid off?
Because it's just callback character. It's like they just like design the character. They're like, so okay, we need a war general. Why is he not a war general anymore? Because whatever happened, and now he's an alcoholic, and that's his backstory, and they don't take it anywhere from there. And I feel like they do that with all the characters.
Yeah. Next on my list, why does Nemesis cut off her arms?
I was so confused in that scene.
I wish she got off her arms to put to install her freaking robot
hands, right? But why?
Yeah.
Why is that the first thing she does when she decides to fight against the Motherworld?
I'm assuming that robotic arm can't, it requires you to cut off your arm. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but why?
So here's the thing, right? During this movie, I kept thinking about Star Wars, right? Number one, because I generally do, but also because there's a bunch of elements taken from Star Wars, but they're not used correctly. So in Star Wars, Luke losing his hand and having a robotic hand is symbolic of his risk that comes from having taken the first step towards the dark side, right? He's beginning to turn into Vader, right? Because and it shows that he is on a dangerous path, and if he doesn't take the corner, he is going to end up like Vader, and that is symbolized by his robotic hand. But robotic hands are cool, so somebody in this movie has one. See what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Or Vader abused his underlings in episodes 4, 5, and 6 because he was not an officer. He stood outside the regular chain of command. And the only way he could get respect from anybody was to show that he was the most powerful person in the room and he was the most ruthless person in the room. And that while he had the backing of the Emperor was not going to hold his hand. He would have to earn the respect of everybody around him. And that is why he kept killing people. Why does Atticus kill anybody? Like, he is being revived, right? He still has the brain upload cable in his neck. And he kills his doctor just because he's trying to do his job. Why does Atticus have to do this? Why is it his personal strategy to be like that? And what does he gain from it? This is clearly imitating, sorry, just to finish the thought, this is clearly imitating Darth Vader. Or characters like him, except Darth Vader had a reason for doing this, and you didn't immediately get the reason, but it was there, and you could piece it together from the clues that you got. Why is Atticus like this?
Wasn't his reason because of his personal goal of getting promoted to some sort of, I don't know what title it was, but...
How does killing his doctor for trying to cure him? and then the weirdest part is, they're not even in a hurry. It's like 5 days to their target planet, to the moon.
Mm.
Like, he could have gone through the rehabilitation and be ready in time for the battle. It's not like, oh, the rebels are, are getting away, so I have to skip, the procedure in order, otherwise they will get away.
Mm.
Like he said, like the doctor said, we have to go through the rehabilitation sequence, and then he kills him, and then he says, okay, now I wait 5 days until we're at the planet, at the moon.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think Zack Snyder was just trying to build, because I do believe, like, I guess, especially with the antagonist, I think because his story wasn't really, like, it wasn't shown to us, so like we don't know why he's just evil. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think what Zack Snyder, his intention was, he was building for more projects, obviously, and just trying to create a franchise where we will soon see the person's story. But unfortunately, he's already created a foundation which majority of people do not like. So it's like you're not even going to get the chance to answer the unanswered questions if
he's dead now.
But it's his job as the writer to communicate stuff like this.
Yeah, I agree.
It's subtle and it can be slow, but it hasn't even started after 2 movies. He has not convinced me that he has put any thought into this.
No, definitely, I do agree. That's why I said, like, he's already created a foundation which isn't good. So you're not even going to be it. If that was your method, if that's what you were actually going to do, where you were going to start revealing more and more in your other projects, then okay, I'll give you the benefit of that when it comes to that. But you haven't even in 2 movies, you haven't even created something which is sustainable enough to even get a part 3 or part 4. And the fact that they're even going to give him a Snyder cut is I don't understand it. I honestly don't. I don't get why they're doing that in the first place. It doesn't make sense. It's like, it's purely just, it's a marketing tactic. Because obviously he saw how well the Snyder Cut for Justice League did, so he's thinking maybe, okay, this is gonna be the same for this one. But it's like, you created part 1 and part 2. Like for Justice League, you didn't create the first one. That was taken over by someone else. But so it makes sense for there to be a Snyder Cut for Justice League. I'm saying for the Justice League which you created, but Rebel Moon, I don't understand why it's going to be a Snyder Cut for this one when you create the first part and the second part. Cool, it's going to be R-rated, but you create 2 movies which aren't good. So
and if that extended cut has all the exposition in it, first of all, there's a lot of exposition in this. It's just bad. It just doesn't amount to very much, and it doesn't answer any of the questions that need to be answered. But if you have to watch the extended version to even understand what's happening, like who people are and who factions are and what the deal is, then that's terrible writing.
But it generally just seems like he's pieced together things that have worked in other movies and he's just chucked it in here. Like generally, it's like he hasn't understood why things are the way they are. It's like he doesn't understand why he needed the Galactic Empire. It's like he didn't understand why certain characters needed to have like certain character traits or needed to act in certain ways. It's just, this was cool, this is what people liked, and people are going to like it in my movie, basically, without really understanding why people like. Everything has a build up, even like literally everything has a build up to to that certain point where, like you said, with like Luke Skywalker having his hand chopped off in whatever episode it occurred in. There's the build up to that. There's the getting to know the character. There's the going through the journey with the character, all eventually leading to this point where this happens. And then people are then affected by it and people react to it a lot more emotionally than just chucking it in there for the sake of chucking it in there.
And it means something in Star Wars. Like some of it was even accidental, but but bottom line is things are in Star Wars for a reason.
Yeah.
That is why I actually think they are legitimately one of the best movies ever made, because they are so full of intention and creativity. It's not just cool stuff. It all fits together for the most part, at least in the classic trilogy. You famously understand what the Empire's deal is within 2 minutes of the movie starting, right? And the Motherworld is not like that, right? It's like a pale imitation of that.
I mean, even all the way down to the photon blades or the phantom blades or whatever they're called in this movie. Like, why
do they say the name?
I don't know.
But did you read that like in some article?
I was so checked out. So if they said the name, I couldn't even tell you. But I don't know why they were in the movie. Like, because they're not used.
Because lightsabers.
Genuinely because lightsabers, because they're not used by any specialist regiment of the Galactic Empire from what we know so far. Everyone's been using guns so far and this, that, and the other, and then out of nowhere we start to get these photon blades or phantom blades, or again whatever they're called. And again, it's just because we can get a cool close hand-to-hand combat towards the end of the movie in the final act, and no other reason.
Yeah. And it doesn't all have to be genius, right? Like,
of course.
Every time I watch stuff like the classic trilogy, I'm reminded of how simple it is. Like, it's not this massive genius piece of fiction that nobody could ever replicate, right? It's actually very by the numbers, but it's just competent all the way through. And I think that is why it's a reasonable comparison and yardstick for this, because all Zack Snyder really had to do is study it and figure out why it works and then do something like it. And this is like the epitome of style over substance. Like, there's no reason for anything. Nothing is motivated. Nothing means anything. Nothing has any significance to anything. Like in Star Wars, you know what everybody's deal is. Like within a minute of going to Cloud City, you know who Lando Calrissian is. Just from a few lines of dialogue and his character design and his demeanor and everything, you know his story, even though you've only seen him for a minute. Like, what is there a character in this way you can say that?
Not at all. You made a very good point.
And again, sorry, just to kind of jump in here one more time. Like, this is not meant to be a bashing on Zack Snyder, even though it kind of has been for part of it. But it's to show that you need to have a good team when you're trying to put something like this together. Like, you can't be the jack of all trades in this. Like, you can be the the really good movie director that shoots cool scenes and stuff like that, even though they're far and few between the first two movies. But writers are writers for a reason, and you can't just go in there with your own ideas and feel like you can kind of just like piece something together without having to know the proper understanding and the proper know-how and proper knowledge on why certain things are the way they are, and sort of understanding like certain like storytelling components and storytelling sort of like basics and stuff like that, because a lot of that is missed. Like, so a lot of the storytelling basics are completely missed in this, and it's a shame. Like at the end of the day, it's a shame, and I feel like the reason people are like so negative to it, and the reason people like maybe feel so strongly about it, is because we want it to be good, because people want good things to watch. People like had hope going into this, and it's turned into a big pile of crap as well.
I was pretty positive towards it when I first heard about it and saw the first trailer. But this looks kind of generic and formulaic, but it's also kind of epic and looks exciting, and I hope it's good. And honestly, like I'm not surprised really. Like Zack Snyder has a reputation, right? He has a certain style and certain sensibilities. But this is like him on steroids, right? Like this is even more Snydery than ever before.
He needs to kill the slow-mos, because he needs to kill the slow-mos, because they were so pointless in some of the most unnecessary scenes in this.
And they're getting worse, right? Like 20 years ago, we got cool fight scenes in 300 and in Watchmen and whatever, and now we're getting farming. Like, I mean, like legitimately, like it's like there's legitimately no reason for it, right? It doesn't tell a story. Like, you can imagine a scene where you see the entire village come together, and like, I think there should have been a farming montage, right? But it shouldn't have been however long it was. It felt like 20 minutes.
It was about 20.
It shouldn't have been slow-mo close-up of like bugs crawling over wheat stalks, right? It should have told us something. It should have communicated something about these people, and maybe they're getting tired, but they're only halfway done, or maybe they're starting to see that they won't get as far as they need to, and so they're starting to panic. And that maybe somebody's having second thoughts about maybe bending the knee to the mother world is not that bad after all. Like anything, and there's nothing.
Can this be fixed?
Not with Snyder. Like, this is all Zack Snyder, and he's
they should
doing
just scrap
what he
it.
wants to do.
They should just scrap this whole world.
I think it's done. Like, they should just not do part 3 and just forget about it. Like that Rogue Squadron movie that Disney has been making for 10 years or whatever it was. They just never canceled it. They're just not going to do it. And they should do the same thing with this. Like, it's just a waste of time and money. Just do something else. Give somebody else a shot.
There's no redeeming qualities about this. There isn't even a standout character in this that you feel like you can maybe like do another sort of movie about. There's nothing about it. Even like the villain, because I had positive things to say about him in the first movie. In this second movie, he's just whatever, man. Like, he's just terrible. It's just like awful to watch. And like the actor, again, I do like the actor. He tries to do as much as possible with the role, but it's just he's given nothing to work with. So at that point, it's just scrap it all.
So then you guys think this is going to be off-putting for other production companies to create something that could, potentially be something that will be better than Star Wars, for example? Because we've tried, obviously the creator has tried, and that wasn't really, I don't believe that was well received either. So, and now there's been Rebel Moon, which has been a flop. So,
but this is a flop because this is just terrible. It's not like they've made a good attempt of it and people weren't interested in it. People sort of didn't care about it. This is just a terrible pair of movies that, like,
it's just a terrible storyteller.
Yeah, and it's just that. Like, if someone came to them with a competent sort of idea and competent sort of story, and they showed sort of the steps that they were going to take and how they were going to flesh it out over like a certain amount of movies, then I don't see why not. But this shouldn't be the reason why studios don't back another sort of epic space opera.
It's not even that expensive, right? Like 170 million, 190 million, whatever it is, for 2 movies. Doesn't break the bank, not for Netflix. They could have made 5 of these and it barely made a dent in their financials. Just give it to somebody who has a track record of actually telling good stories. Like, I understand that Zack Snyder has a reputation for being good to work with, and he's not a nice guy, and he sticks to timetables and budgets and whatever, and that has value in a business, right? But at some point, getting something done on time and under budget, if the result is a predictable mess that just has no redeeming quality, like this will get a bunch of views in the first week and then never again. Like, why would anybody recommend this to anybody?
You're not getting new subscribers from this. I don't believe.
Is there anything else anyone wants to add before we go to the last thoughts?
don't know. I mean, like, we could go through all the specifics of how nothing matters, nobody has character arcs, nothing is set up or paid off. Nobody has clear motivations or interesting motivations beyond very basic archetypes. It's just all a waste, in my opinion.
All right, guys. So, last thoughts.
I'll wrap up quickly first. Ratings. This is a 1 out of 10. This is just irredeemable crap. Like, this is the biggest waste of time. I was so angry having to sit through and watch this movie. Like, it was just a big waste of time. I'm over this. I hope what we do next is better. And yeah, that's my thoughts. I'm over this. I'm done with it.
Yeah. So I gave Madam Web a 5 out of 13. So I'll give this a 5 out of 12 because it's actually a movie. Like, contrary to what you said earlier, however, it's actually a movie in the sense that Madam Web wasn't. It's just a bad one. Like, it makes all the amateur mistakes. This is a bit like giving somebody who's never directed anything like $200 million and tell them to make a movie. Like, they would make very predictable mistakes and they would be kind of excusable because when would this person have had a time to learn? But Zack Snyder is what, 30 years in the business, whatever it is. Like, he has no reason to not know this stuff, and Netflix has no reason to expect him to do anything else. Like, it's whichever way you slice it and however you look at it, it was just ill-conceived from the start. Like, nobody should give this guy work because he's just like he 20 years ago he was pretty competent at adapting other people's stories. Like 300 and Watchmen are the two standouts, and there's probably a few others if you go through the list.
Man of Steel.
Man of Steel. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that one is ill-conceived from the start. Like, that you should not let somebody with Zack Snyder's sensibilities anywhere near a Superman movie. It just doesn't work, or any superhero movie for that. You need a certain amount of idealism, even for a dark character. Like, the idea of heroism has to still exist in the movie, otherwise it's not a superhero movie. And Zack Snyder thinks that is stupid. Like, that is why I kind of wrote off the DCEU pretty much after Man of Steel, basically. And unless they would have swapped him out and replaced him with somebody else, and that somebody was Joss Whedon and he made it worse. So that's a different conversation. Point is, like, none of this is surprising, and Zack Snyder is doing Zack Snyder things, and nobody should be surprised by this. Okay. And that's what's baffling about this. Like, it's not even about the money. Like, Netflix has enough money, and I think, like, they announced something about their strategy being they want to diversify their offering, right? Where basically we basically want to offer something for everybody, right? And that something, and that everybody includes Zack Snyder fans. That's fair enough. But then they also need to do other stuff. It's just ill-conceived from the start. Should not have been done. That money, and not just money, right? Netflix has enough money, but there's only so many things that can produce in a year, and Rebel Moon took up 2 slots of that. And you could have made a whole bunch, not just 2, but a whole bunch of movies that are more interesting, and some of them might even have been space opera. Like, it's just waste of time for everybody.
Well, for me, I will give this a 5 out of 10. It was average. I've seen worse and I've seen much better. Funny enough, I actually do believe I would actually like to see a part 3, but just with different scriptwriters, because I personally believe that he tried to save unanswered questions for his future projects, which unfortunately you just can't do when you already set a foundation which is so low and below par. But I do think, because there was a lot of gaps in the script, I think if with part 3 there was, when it comes to the visuals, he just handles the visuals when it comes to the film. But if he gives it off to scriptwriters that, actually know what they're doing, good scriptwriters, I think he can. It will be hard, but it can be revived. Just depending on how good the part 3 is. But I generally do believe he just needs different scriptwriters if they were going to attempt for part 3. But overall, for me, it was an average film. Yeah. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed today's discussion. This one was very entertaining. We will be reacting to Abigail next week, I believe. So definitely be on the lookout for that episode. Hervé, do you wanna plug in?
Yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are a Zack Snyder fan and this is your favorite Zack Snyder movie, please put it down in the comments and argue why we're stupid and we couldn't see the greatness in this movie.
Well, you heard it first from Hervé himself, man. But all right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in to this week's episode. We will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.